This suit cost me $7,000, and I wrote the whole thing off on my taxes. If you have a brand and you have a logo, and you put your logo and your brand on your clothing, you can write off all of those pieces.
No disrespect to this very well-dressed gentleman. That is a killer suit, and I've seen some of his other videos. He's got some really cool cars, but I'm not sure he's getting good advice on this. Under the Internal Revenue Code, Section 162A, it says a taxpayer can deduct all ordinary and necessary business expenses, or expenses that you paid or incurred in carrying on a trade or business. So yeah, there's some accuracy that if you've got a business and a logo, there's tax benefits to that. But IRC 262A disallows deductions for personal, living, or family expenses. And there's actually a lot of case law on this. A lot of people have tried to take this to court, lawyers in particular, because they spend a lot of money on suits. Objection! Clothing kind of sits at the intersection of two of those sections. So the general rule on clothing under the Treasury regulations, which you don't need me to cite that whole thing right now, but it basically says that the cost of clothing is a personal expense, meaning you can't deduct it, unless it's required as a condition of employment or business. So it's not a convenience. It's not a marketing expense, which I'll talk about. It's required. It's a condition of employment. That means that it can't be suitable for general or everyday wear, which the case law on this says suits are kind of okay for general and everyday wear. And even if the clothing is worn exclusively for business, and I think about the lawyers that go to court, it's not deductible if it's adaptable to everyday use. Now, there are some ways that you can get around this, but there's a lot more to it than just throwing your logo on the thing. Simply adding your logo doesn't automatically make clothing deductible. If your clothing remains suitable for everyday wear, your suits, your polo shirts, your dresses, your business attire, it unfortunately remains a personal expense under 262. Now, here's some good news. There has been some case law on this, and for example, employees of high-end clothing boutiques who are required to buy their employer's clothing can actually often take deductions for this stuff. The business owners can take deductions if it's necessary for their business and it's part of demonstrating what they have. So if this guy's got a suit store, maybe there's an argument here that can be made. I've had a lot of my lawyer friends suggest to me that they can get a custom suit built and they can throw their logo on the liner of the jacket, but that doesn't really work well either because the suit can still be used for general wear. So it's personal use under Section 262. It's not deductible under Section 162. The one saving grace on this is if there is an incremental cost of designing the logo and embroidering or printing or stitching it and doing the branding work, that part of the expense may count as advertising or marketing. So if you buy a shirt, you can't deduct the shirt. But if you pay $20 to put your logo on it, you might be able to deduct that $20. And now we're not talking about $7,000 suits. We're talking about nickel and dime savings on the back end. So if you want to try to find a way to make your clothing deductible, maybe it should be a uniform that's required for work, or it can't be adaptable to everyday wear. So scrubs, safety gear, theater costumes. The key is that it has to fail that everyday suitability test. So just because you add your logo, it doesn't change the character of the clothing, which is really what the IRS is going to be looking at. Only those incremental branding costs could potentially qualify as advertising or as marketing. And now we're talking about taking a really big risk to write off a $7,000 suit just because the piece of it where you spend maybe an extra couple $100 to throw your logo on it is the only part that's deductible. So maybe not going to be a really great risk and reward calculation here.